recording of the SpiderWeb SmallBasic recipe for teachers. This recipe is best taught in the order shown on the wiki, so hopefully you've taught square, houses, spiral. This uses the concepts of subroutines, of for loops, and of variables in combination. So it's a good recipe to teach kind of in the middle as a review of these concepts. Like everything else, we don't necessarily start on the first line because we want to show the intention as we're translating the recipe. And another technique I'm going to be showing is fake it till you make it. There's some areas we need to fake. So what I'm going to do is scroll down here, and then we're going to start on a line that we can see, which is in the Weave One Layer section. So we're going to take line 26, which is turn the tortoise 1/6 of 360 degrees to the right. We're going to say tortoise.turn 360 divided by 6, and then we're going to run that. Again, always encourage the kids to run after every line and to not clean up or delete the line until it's completely translated. As you get into the intermediate recipes, they're going to want to clean up, and if you're in a faking it stage, have them not remove that line until it's completely translated. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go down to the draw triangle subroutine, and we're going to use a fake it technique here. Move the tortoise the length of a line. We don't know how long that is, so we're going to say tortoise.move and just put a standard value of 50. So it's going to draw a line of 50 after it rotates. And there you go. And then we're going to leave that because 50 is not the length of the line. And then turn the tortoise 1/3 of 360 degrees. We're going to say tortoise.turn and 360 divided by 3. You might wonder why we do that, and the reason we put the 360 divided by rather than the value is so that they get the concept of how much of a circle it is. We find that it's easier for them to understand what they're actually doing than if you put the value in degrees. So we'll clean up that line. So now what we're going to do is we're first going to draw the triangle. So to do that, if you can read out line 36 for me.
Do the following 3 times.
And by this time, if you've taught the recipe sequentially, the kids really should know this is a 4 keyword. Again, if they're still stuck, have them do the control space, arrow up and down. And that's not just for keywords, but that's just an area that we find the kids take a while to learn. And then point out the documentation. The repetition really helps build the understanding, and you'll find the rates of learning in the pairs are very much differing. If you're teaching over time, like an after-school program, and this is the 3rd or 4th time the pair that you've been working with can't get a for loop, you might want to mix up the pairs. It's just a teaching tip. For I equals 1, 2, 3. And then hopefully by now they're comfortable with translating line 41, which is
repeat,
into an end 4. One of the things we've done in the syntax of the recipes is you can see the repeat indicates the end 4 and the end of the recipe indicates the end sub when we get to it. So have them do their indent so they can see that by formatting the program. And then we'll go ahead and run that, and that should draw a little triangle. And it does. So that's good. So now we've translated line 36, so we can clean that up. And we've translated line 40, so we can clean that up. So now we're going to take this into a sub. So recipe is our English word for subroutine. So again, they can do control space to find that subroutine. You don't want to tell them the word. You want it to come from their mouth if possible, because it's going to be something they're going to remember. Again, this end of draw triangle is a marker for them to remember to put their end sub. A really common thing kids will do throughout recipes, but this one in particular, because there's lots of subs and lots of for loops, is they'll mix up the ends. So make sure they don't delete the comment lines until they get a proper working sub. Now in this case, of course, there's 2 steps to a sub. If they run it, nothing's going to happen, and you might ask them why. So why is nothing happening when I'm running this program?
You haven't called it.
That's right. So we have to go up to line 24 here, and we have to call draw triangle. Again, encourage the kids to use the IntelliSense so they get the method name right. If they type it, they often do it as 2 words, and then that messes up, or maybe doesn't put the parentheses in. So we're going to go ahead and run it, and that should give us our triangle. And notice now the angle is different. You might ask the kids why the angle of origin is different, and the more astute ones will see that line 26 comes after the draw triangle. So that would be why. So we'll remove these extraneous comments now. And again, encourage the kids to format, particularly this recipe, and you'll see why as we go through. So the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to go and make the tortoise go a little bit faster. So we have 3 reviews up in the very top that review the getters and setters. If the kids are stuck on that, you might want to show the getter and setter slide. So can you read line 1 for me?
Make the tortoise go as fast as possible.
Okay, so that should be our set speed here. Now you may choose to hold off on this, but I think that for the purposes of this demonstration, we're comfortable with this. Sometimes we teach it later in the recipe because we want the kids to actually see how the render is going in case they've messed up. But so that's your call. Read line 2, please.
Change the width of the line the tortoise draws to 1 pixel.
And again, we're purposely reinforcing the getters and setters here. So we're going to say set pen width. The default, of course, is 2 if you taught the previous recipes. And the reason this is a spider web and we want it to be really thin. So there you go. And then we'll just delete this line out. And then read line 3 for me, please.
Change the color of the line the tortoise draws to silver.
So tortoise, and this is going to be set pen color. And we can use either the string silver or colors dot silver. And this doesn't show up super great on a white background, but it is a spider web. So the person who wrote this recipe wanted it to be silver, so we're drawing it that way. So now we will get rid of this line. And then the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to work with these concepts of current. So this is our English keyword to indicate that you have to create a variable. Now, as hard as we try to make 1 line of English to 1 line of code, sometimes within SmallBasic you have to do a couple of lines. So we're going to have the kids translate both lines 4 and line 6. So go ahead and read line 4, please.
The current length of a line is 10 pixels.
Okay, so we're going to say length, and this is a variable, so we're typing it. Make sure the kids spell it right. And then the next one is the current zoom is 1, so we're going to create another variable, zoom equals 1. Then we're not using these variables yet, so when we run it, this is still going to just generate our triangle. But we did translate that, so we can take those out. Okay. So now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go down to the weave 1 layer. Okay. Now before we translate the recipe, we've still got another loop to translate here. So if you read line 17.
Do the following 6 times.
Okay. So this is going to be a for loop again. But because we've already used I, we need to use a different variable here. So for j equals 1, 2, 6. There's a bug, tortoise, so we want to say 2, 6. And then have the kids put in the N4. That's really important. Otherwise, they're going to get an error. And then they're going to run it. And that's going to give them this shape. So then have them format as well. And then clean up their code. And then the next thing that they need to do is they need to increase the length of the line by the current zoom. Now this is going to be a hard line for them to translate. So what we recommend that they do is before they do this, we actually go up to this first section here and we translate line 10. So let's translate line 10.
Change the zoom so that it is multiplied by 1.3.
Now for some reason, this concept of manipulating a variable is really difficult to teach. So I've said this in previous recipes, but what we found is if kids are stuck, you literally want to say, what is the value of the zoom now? So it's 1. And what do you want to do to it? You want to multiply it times 1.3. So what we can usually get them to do is zoom equals 1 times 1.3. We can usually get them there by talking them through it. And then go ahead and run that. That's not going to do anything because the zoom's not being called. But then you can say now, 1 is the same thing as zoom, and then usually they'll get the idea. So that's what we're going for there. And then if you run that again, it's not being called, so it doesn't really do anything at this point. So we did translate it though, so we're going to take it out. So now in line 19, if you read that.
Increase the length of the line by the current zoom.
So the length of the line is a variable called length, and you can use the same teaching pattern by putting in the actual number. So we want to say length is equal to length plus zoom. Now if you run this, this isn't going to do anything because the length is not being called yet. We're defining the value, but we're not using the value. So this is a tricky concept, so you can run it. It's not going to do anything. You can see that if we take this out, because that is correct, where it's being called is down here in line 26. So read line 26 out.
Move the tortoise the length of a line.
This is a really good example of the fake it till you make it because the length took a while for us to build. So we want to change the 50, which is the hard-coded value, into the variable length and have the kids use the IntelliSense so they get it spelled right. And so now when we run it, we get a little tiny beginning of a spider web. So that's what we're going for. So we're going to take that off. And now what we're going to do is we're going to encapsulate this weave one layer into a sub. So we're going to say sub weave one layer. And then we're going to do our end sub. And again, this recipe helps kids to understand encapsulating parts of the creation. One of the things we talk about is the cooking. Like if you're baking a layer cake, like you might have a recipe for one layer, you might have a recipe for another layer, and it might have a recipe for the frosting. And that helps kids to understand why we have these subs. Obviously, any of you that have had experience in programming know it's key to understanding programming so you don't have these hideously long single files. So we'll go ahead and run that. It's not going to do anything because we didn't call weave one layer. So we need to call weave one layer. You want to keep emphasizing this with the kids, the difference between creating a sub and calling a sub. So now it's looking pretty good, but we still have one more thing to do. So let's get rid of this line, get rid of this line, and then let's put our final loop in. So what does line 6 say?
Do the following 10 times.
For k equals, again, use a different letter here, 1, 2, 10, and then we want to say end for, and then let's just make it pretty and format it. And if we've done everything correctly, we should have a nifty looking spider web. Looks pretty awesome. Yay! So that's the spider web recipe. I'm happy to say this is a recipe that was authored by one of our volunteers, Katrina Owen, who's a developer out of Norway. So big thanks to Katrina for authoring this. And if any of you are inspired to author recipes, we actually have a recipe creation guideline in the first teacher section because we would love to have more recipes in our library. So again, when you're teaching this, once the kids are finished, we encourage you to have an instructor recap, and then we will encourage you to have variations and then a quiz. At this point, I don't believe we have a quiz for this recipe, but we intend to have one in the future. For more information and more recipes, go to www.teachingkidsprogramming.org. Thanks.